Um, as I was saying, we want the postgraduate mastery program to be a deep dive into enhancing your practice in the five different areas that are going to be presented, and also offering support and knowledge about how to bring core energetics to clients in today's culture, which we all know is shifting on many, many levels. Um, we're offering some changes in the program this year. One of which that I'm really excited about is process groups will still happen on Friday and Sunday, with the exception of the June weekend, because you'll be doing presentations. But the process groups this time around are not going to be just regular process groups. You'll still have space to process, but the facilitator's role will be there to support a supervision lab, basically. So we want for the participants to have a deep dive into leading process and leading groups and facilitating the work that happens there. And so the facilitator will be there to support you, offer some supervision, but the students, the participants, will be leading the work, and supporting each other in doing that as well. And each year, the post-grad people do a project. One part of that is to facilitate a workshop and do a write-up about how that workshop went. The other part of the project is to write a paper um, about some aspect of core energetics or some aspect of the work that captures your interest and appeals to you. And this year we're trying to organize that project. We've got some people who we hope can help support people who are interested in having their paper published. So that's another thing to consider if you have any interest in getting publishing your paper project published. We want to be as supportive of that as we're able. Um, Teresa Bullet Gordon is not here tonight, but she'll also in the June weekend be doing a unit, a module on marketing your practice with social media, and she's got a lot of experience in that field, and she's going to offer some support around that as well. Um, am I missing anything, Lindsay, for this little overview? Okay, cool. So let's
For
get
one
started.
piece is the addition of Mondays. Did you say that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. This year the program will run Friday afternoon through Monday afternoon at 4 p.m. And we're excited about that. The facilitators have super graciously agreed to and are interested and excited to present on Monday. So you'll get a longer time to be with the work uh, and take a little bit of a deeper dive into each experience. So with that, let's get started. The facilitators are here and they're each going to just tell you a little bit about what they're thinking in terms of the weekend, and then we'll have each of them take some space and speak, and then we'll make some time for questions from all of you. So we're going to be starting with Jeremy Fullweiler, and Jeremy will be facilitating a weekend on systems and systemic issues and how they intersect with core energetics.
Yeah, so thank you, Jem, and exciting to be with this crew of faculty and students and graduates here tonight. So the module that I'm working on organizing here is really designed to expand the lens that we look through when we look through the lens of core energetics. A way that we can integrate the theory that we have, the deep theory that we have, with a theory from other disciplines, particularly the interdisciplinary theory of systems theory, which helps us look outward at the way that different groupings, different kinds of communities, different types of ways that people organize themselves and understand themselves on a larger social scale. into what we do with core. And interestingly, the core model is in and of itself a systems model. It's just a micro systems model. It looks inward. And I think it does that with extraordinary nuance in looking at how the different systems that are at play within each individual. And so if you think of core in a way as like a microscope, this class is designed to let core to become a type of like wide angle vision, so that we're able to really take in a lot more as we're looking at what we're working with. So both wide angle vision and a type of telescope, but maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that this time, or this will be teasers for the class in October or whenever it happens. But we'll be working over the course of the weekend with some intentional but broad questions, like inquiry. And I'll be bringing in various kinds of some didactic or theoretical framework, but just really enough to give us a foothold, so that we can, if you think about like rock climbing, some way of getting a different view. So bringing in some different kinds of information, for example, within the field of social work, which is, I'm a social worker by education and by profession, and by bringing in one element of systems theory from social work, which is called person and environment, of how we look at people as impacted by all the things that are going on in the environment around them. So we'll bring in some information, for example, around that, and then invite wisdom from around the room. And it's in the fashion of systems theory, which has as a core belief or tenet that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so the class, in a lot of regards, is designed to bring in some didactic information and so forth, to have some experientials. But then for us as a group, as a system ourselves over the weekend, to not only enhance our individual understandings, but quite potentially, and I can't see any way that we wouldn't, also get to expand the core in the field of core energetics in the way that we can talk about it and have something to bring forward. And one of my hopes is perhaps it will inspire somebody in the class to go into one of these topics or themes that come forward, and to explore it as part of your postgraduate project, where I think there's a lot of room and a lot of need for writing and research around these ideas. So I've been trying to find a way, like, how can I talk about this in a way that's succinct? But there's three different points I wanted to just offer around it before passing the baton here. And that is, the course is in part designed so that when we're working with our clients, and I use the word client here, I'm talking about an individual or a couple or a process group. When we're working with a client in one of these configurations, our model really helps us understand the individual and familial elements. And so, but what happens when we find ways of working with a client in which we're bringing in other themes around social identity, bringing in other themes around intergenerational experiences that are true in their family? When we find other ways of bringing in components that sometimes, like what was going on at the time of their birth, we call that the chrono system, the movement of time. What happens when we bring these things into the room, and how can we do that in a way that helps people feel more seen? That also helps us. One of the things that core is so incredible at is it builds our ability to take more personal responsibility in our lives. But when we bring in more information, we also find some ways where if we just hold people to their personal responsibility, it can become something you might have heard of called blaming the victim, where all of a sudden somebody is expected to create a change in a way that actually is disserving their evolution, that's actually perpetuating a kind of hurt or harm that they've endured that's gotten them to the point where they're at. So when we pull more of a wider lens in, we're able to see places where our clients may not only need personal support with personal responsibility, but support with how to face environmental issues and concerns in ways that allow them to feel more seen and, oh, this is what's going on. I'm thinking about something about the feminism in the 1970s came up with incredible wisdom of you're not depressed, you're oppressed, and helping people understand what's going on in the way that you're experiencing yourself actually is an impact of something outside of you. So stop blaming yourself or looking at yourself as though you're the problem. So when we bring in some of these elements, we can help have these more nuanced and I think really important conversations with clients. The impacts there, of course, very clear in couples work or relationship work, depending no matter what the structure of the relationship or group work, or differences are going to be in the room. One other way that exploration that we'll have in the class is taking the wisdom of core energetics. For example, if we think about the parts of self, higher self, lower self, mask, and what happens if we look at systems as also having a higher self, a lower self, a mask? What happens if we look at a political party as having these three different parts? What happens if we look at other elements that are going on in our culture, in our society, in our country, in our world, as being as varied, as multidimensional as we are as individuals? Other ways that we can bring this is our characterology, as we look at energy and fragmentation or undercharge, overcharge, displaced, rigidity. What happens if we take our understanding of characterology from just looking at an individual, but if we see these are energetic patterns that are existing all around us, as is within, as is without. So what happens if we look at, for example, the world through the lens of a psychopathy or displacement, and how that helps us understand dynamics of power and oppression, which is a displaced or distorted organization of energy and power in a community. So I don't want to geek out too much about it right now, but there's a lot of ways that if we take these different characterologies and we use them like as a projector, we'll see, oh my goodness, in core energetics, we have, I think, a remarkable way of talking about what's going on energetically in a system that isn't being held or talked about by and large out in the wild. So not only does this mean that this can enhance the way that we understand the world or that we can help our clients understand the world, but then it also can shift who we think of as a client. So if we think traditionally of our clients as individuals, couples, or groups, all of a sudden, if we're looking at taking our scholarship, our wisdom, our tools, our theory, and applying it on this larger scale, we can start talking about clients that are organizations, clients that are enterprises, clients that are communities, because it's going to help give us frameworks to be able to support those larger kinds of systems to also understand where is their energy blocked, where is their energy flowing, and how can we support the full expression of whatever is called that enterprise or that system into existence. So I'm going to cut myself off. Those are a few of the things that I'm looking forward to exploring and being with you in inquiry and an experiential inquiry around.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Jean Denny was unfortunately unable to be here this evening, but she'll be here in December. And I'm just going to read something very quickly. You may have already read it on the flyer, but it gives just a brief synopsis of what she'll be covering in her weekend. In core energetics, we often talk about blocks to energy, movement in the body. We study the first years of 8 to 12 in life in detail. But what about the rest of our human life? Does human development stop at 12 or 25 or 50 or death? And what about this energy movement itself? Are there patterns in it? These are questions that Jean's been working on since her own years in core, when she was simultaneously a hospice worker and grad student in transpersonal psychology. In this weekend, she'll bring an introduction to her work that includes original theories of life, death, aging, consciousness, and the body. It will begin in theory, advance to experiential work, and end with the clinical applications of these insights. So I'm really excited to have Jean join the team this year. After conversations with her, it feels like Jeremy was just talking about systems as a frontier in our work in some ways. I think this is another frontier that she's talking about in terms of what's the bigger picture when we're talking about life force, energy. So anyway, I'm very excited that she'll be here. Right now, I'd like to introduce Brian Gleason and Marcia Gleason, who are both teachers of mine when I joined the program. So I've had the good fortune to know them for a long time and have been really impacted by the teaching that I received from them. They'll be leading a weekend around the theme of relationship. And so, Brian, Marcia, the floor is yours.
Go ahead, Marsh.
Yeah, so I just want to thank Jim and Sherry for kind of organizing this, and Lindsay, I'm sure that that you've been part of it too. And yeah, I'm really, it's we don't come to the Institute very often, but we really love coming and teaching our work, because our the origins of our work are in core. Yeah, so Brian and I began probably in the late 90s to start thinking about like how we could adapt the concepts of core energetics, or the ideas and the principles and the wisdom of core energetics and path work into working with couples. And we originally were working pretty exclusively. We were focusing our work on couples, that intimate couples, but we realized that, the work can really be applied to all kinds of relationships. And even though our primary focus is on working with couples, we're really hoping that people kind of take the ball and run with using some of the work that we've developed into working with other kinds of relationships, like friendships, for example, is a really untapped area of, the difficulties that we have, in friendships could be, such an untapped area that, that someone could take the ball and really focus on that. But our work draws a lot from core energetics, primarily core energetics, path work. Over the years, I've taken a lot of courses on embodied trauma work, polyvagal, the way the nervous system works, and polyvagal, and IFS, and looking at of parts of the self. So over the years, we've kind of integrated a lot of things into our work. But the basic premise, the basic principle of what we do is we help people in relationships move from their protected ways of relating with each other into more compassionate ways of relating to each other. Now that sounds really simple, but it's really very challenging and very complex, right? Because people are wedded to their protections, especially in couples work and with couples. Like when you see an individual, right, they're, you're their positive transferential figure. When you work with a couple, right, there's enormous amount of threat in the room. They're triggering each other. So their protections are going to be right there. So it's really fertile ground for, for you to work on, and helping them to look at the ways they protect and defend in relationship, how their lower self comes out in relationship. It's like our defenses, our character defenses, right? They have a they have a protective component to it, but they also have a lower self component to it also. And that's actually, you know, when you work with couples that aren't core couples, the idea of the lower self is very foreign to them. Like they don't have lower selves. So, you know, we find that doing lower self work sometimes comes later when you're working with couples and you develop a safe relationship with them. So you can kind of compare like the work that we do to the, you know, evolutionary process of core, which is penetrating the mask, transforming the lower self, and then moving into higher self. And Brian and I believe that the ultimate work of all relationship work is compassion. So you have to move through the negativity in order to get to the higher self states, which are vulnerability, self-responsibility, remorse, and love. It's all about opening the heart, right? And we very much are aware of the idea of charge and discharge, that some of the difficulties and the negative feelings have to be charged before they release into the more vulnerable feelings and the discharge, the discharge. So it's kind of a process of moving, helping people move from their protections, which are right in the room, right, when you're working with them, you know, and you know, moving into the more vulnerable areas. So Brian and I like to think about relationship as a wisdom bath, just as core is an evolutionary process, so is relationship. And everything that you want to learn about yourself and the way you function in the world shows up in your relationship. And, you know, our work with people is to help them use their relationship in service of their transformation and evolution. And just to say that some of you know this, that Brian and I have been together for 45 years. And we walk the walk most of the time, not all of the time. And really so much of what we teach comes out of our own experience. And one of the things that we really wanted to do, because relationships are so freaking complex, they're so complex. And one of the things that we really wanted to do, you know, my parents' relationship was complex and crazy, and I didn't understand what was going on. So my work in the world has been really trying to simplify and understand what is going on in the complexity of relationship and be able to describe that, to be able to pinpoint that when you're working with clients in a very clear way. So that's kind of a general overview. I don't know whether I missed anything, but Brian is going to talk about some of the specifics that we're going to teach over the weekend.
I just want to check in time-wise because I know we're crunched for time here.
Yeah, we've got a couple minutes if you want to.
Okay, I'll try to go through this.
I'm going to be very quick, so take time.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Was I too long?
First off, I want to say hi. I see some familiar faces and some less familiar faces, but it's really nice to see y'all. I'm saying y'all because I live down here in North Carolina now, so. And you guys isn't a good thing to say anymore, so y'all works really well. What I'm going to do is just share with you 5 topics that we're going to address in the 4 days together. And obviously, I'm just going to top line them here a little bit. First is the shared energy field. And this is the relational component of embodiment. So we don't exist separate from others, from life, and the closer we are and the more intimate we are with somebody, the more impactful we are, and we create this shared energy field. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to work on that. The weekend together is going to be largely experiential. Everything we're going to be working with is going to be addressed through the lens of our experimentation together. The second area we're going to cover is the nervous system in relationship. And we're going to cover topics such as what we call triggers, which is when we react to another human being with an intensity because it activates something from our past and how that shows up in our relationships. Negative narratives, we're going to talk about how we create stories about the other that are often fixed and negative and how we start to see another human being. What we call the 80-20 principle, where so much of how we show up is really a result of our history. And when there's a conflict in a relationship of any kind, we like to say that, and the numbers are sort of made up, there's no science behind them, but it's to make a point that 80% of our reaction to another, the trigger, comes from our history, and 20% actually something's going on. So if you step on my toe and I turn around and punch you, the fact that I punched you suggests I have a lot of history in that. But I actually did step on your toe. So there's a 20% reality piece. What we call no first cause. And in this idea of protective patterns, that each and every one of us as a human being protects against things that we were not allowed to feel growing up. So exiled feelings, vulnerabilities. Third area is what we call meta skills. And these are the embodied aptitudes we're all born with. And some of the primary ones we're going to touch on are curiosity, intuition, humility, and empathy, and how these are actually the tools for relating to another human being. Fourth, we're going to spend a fair amount of time on what we call conflict mastery. Most of the literature on conflict is about conflict management or how to quickly get over conflict. We're going to talk about the value of conflict and what it brings up energetically for us, and 5 stages of a productive conflict, which takes us through mask and lower self into a down-regulating process where we need to let go of seeing the other as the enemy, and then into repair and higher self wisdom, what we take from a conflict, what we learn, how we grow from a conflict. And finally, what Marcia and I call full self-expression. And full self-expression is the layers of human reactions, responses, and feelings when one gets wounded, one gets hurt. And we like to describe them simply as going from protection to vulnerability to connection and expansion. So that's my 5. And I'm sticking to it.
Thank you so much, Brian and Marcia. I really appreciate it. Next, we have Sherry Brown, who has been a huge part of my core energetics journey on every level. So I can absolutely verify, as you all already know anyway, with all these people, you'll be in excellent hands. So
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And thank you, Lindsay. And thank you, everyone. It's nice to be here in this group of people. Feels really good. And hi, Ted. I don't know how to text back, but nice to see you. So when we were talking about this and Jim asked if we would all do 4 days, I thought, as much as it felt like a hard thing, I thought 4 days of doing sexuality in a core context feels so luxurious and so important, because, you know, there's so much that the training needs to accomplish in such a short time. And sexuality gets short shrift. And it doesn't get short shrift it gets short shrift in what it deserves, because it's really the root of everything, and it's certainly the root of core. But it also, if I'm honest, feels like the root of healing, because everything we all know, since you've had a few classes in it, we all know that everything that is happening in the psyche is showing up in sexuality. And so it's a beautiful lens and a beautiful entry point into the healing. And in addition, it's the place where we are most charged, where we have so much energy, where our energy gets blocked. It's a place where we can unleash our creativity, from which we create our lives. And it's a place where we're really embodied and connected to spirit. So it's so important, and we don't have enough time. So 4 days to delve into this, to do your own personal work, to work with whatever's in the way of being able to hold space for your clients or for groups in this realm, just feels so important. One of the things that I loved about the 5th year, which I did here in New York, was that everything that I explored really set me onto the path of what my practice is about. So my project itself was about Hero's Journey. There's probably not a day that I don't work with, talk about, hold the lens of Hero's Journey in this work. It actually informed my entire practice. And I would say the same with sexuality, because we were offered an opportunity to teach in an area of sexuality, and I picked sexual fantasy, something I knew nothing about working with. And again, it's something I love. I think it's the most elegant form of healing there is. So my offering will include an opportunity to pick a subject, to learn it thoroughly through mentorship, and to teach it, to create an experience around it, to understand how to work with it, to teach others how to work with it. Again, all with mentorship. Ensuring that when you leave, you know how to work with these things in whatever context you're in, whether it be individual, couples, groups, and like, you know, Brian and Marcia said, couples meaning all things, systems. So it's related, and it will continue to build on everything that's come before, everything that everybody's talked about. I'm always struck how, you know, the work and the context is the same through all these lenses. Sexuality is no different. It might be just a little ratcheted up. So I'm really excited to have the abundance of time to be able to teach this and to be able to mentor you. One last thing I'll say is, you know, I always say that this work is kind of an interpretive art, that everybody has to find their artistry, their mastery. This is part of finding your mastery, but really your artistry, like how it lives in your hands and through your lens and in your style. And sexuality is a beautiful place to find your artistry. So I want to encourage that. That feels important. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Beautiful. Next, we're going to hear from Brian Cameron, who's going to do some mentoring in the program around addiction.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I think I pretty much know everybody on here, which is nice. So in the 5th weekend, okay, the whole weekend will not be about addiction, but we will do a day on it, okay? And my quote unquote expertise in this comes from my personal journey to start with. I was able to get sober in 2001 through the help of 12-step programs. And while abstinence-only 12-step programs have helped millions and millions of people all over the world for the last 85 years, they actually have about a 10% success rate, right? So 90% of the people who come into 12-step programs never wind up maintaining any sort of long-term sobriety. So there are, especially recently, there's been a lot of advancements in helping addicted people, stuff like harm reduction and the use of psychedelics, okay, to open up new pathways for people. So we'll discuss some of that. We'll be working a lot with Dr. Gabor Mate's book In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, which, by the way, is on Audible. So you don't have to read the whole thing, but you do have to read the whole thing. But you can listen to the whole thing. But it's really excellent. Dr. Mate has been on the front lines of working with addicted people for the last 30 years. And he works directly with them every day, and he writes beautifully. And it's a wealth of information. So we're going to start with from right at the top with that. Most people who suffer from very low bottom addictions do have experienced some sort of trauma or some abuse in their life as children. And so to look at, when we're working with our addicted clients from a trauma-informed model, as we're also learning, here at the Institute now, to do, but really, so one way to gain empathy, right, is to see how we identify and relate with others, right? So another thing we'll be doing in this class is exploring our own addictions, right? As they come up in many different ways. I talked about some, we don't have to go into it, but we all know the ways in which we're addicted, and most people have experienced some sort of addicted behavior in their life, and it can be applied, and you get to build your container. Working with addicted clients is challenging, and you'll need a lot of supervision, right? So a lot of the work is really building your container to hold and be aware of your stigmas around addiction. Addicted people are facing stigmas constantly, and they're constantly beating themselves up with that. So, fleshing them out and using your group as a little test tube to be able to, do what we do, right? Get your lower self out, get that vitriol out about how you feel. You may have some history with addicted people. You may have some addiction and that you're dealing with right now. So understanding our own addictions, understanding our biases, using the core energetic model to working with addicts. We'll do some role play sessions. We will talk about some other modalities which are more widely used in addiction circles, such as psychodrama, right? And talk, you can start to use what you know and use the core energetic model and kind of soften the edges a little bit to help bring it to addicts. We'll talk about ways in which you might be tentative to bring someone into a lower self work if they're, coming in with addictions that seem to wrangle their lives. And you should be tentative about that. All right. So we'll talk about that. We will talk about using soft techniques, being in the concept of the here and now, and that we work in the here, or we do our best to work in the here and now with people, and how that very much coincides with something that addicted people hear all the time, which is one day at a time, right? So they get good mirroring from us, and it helps our clients to stay in the present moment. That's what I have for now.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you, Brian. And also participating in just to clarify, in the June weekend, Sunday, you'll be doing your 5th year, your postgraduate year presentations. And I'll speak a little more about that after we're done with this part. But for right now, Ted will be joining us in June. Ted Riskin, who was also an instructor of mine back when I joined the program and had a very profound impact on me. I remember Ted's, you did supervision with us a lot, and I loved it when you were in the room for that. But anyway, so Ted, take it away. Floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Jim. I love being in that room. So, like 10 minutes into this, I just realized like, wow, everyone here has graduated this program. And that kind of felt profound to me. Like and most of you I don't know. And I feel honored to just kind of be in this group right now. So in terms of what I'll be presenting in June, I really don't know. It will depend on who's in the class. And I expect someone in the class will already be doing psychedelic psychotherapy, and other people in the class, like the strongest thing you ever ingested was sarsaparilla. So based on the needs of the class, that will determine where we go exactly. But even for the latter group, chances are, if you're working with clients, some of them will be doing psychedelic therapy, and it'll be good to know what's up with them. And a lot of people say, for example, who are going for ketamine infusions won't be getting integration, and you will be their integration. So kind of understanding the importance of integration in psychedelic work will be important. We may talk about things like psychedelic versus psycholytic work, and with ketamine being legal, and probably by the time this class happens, MDMA will also be legal. So there'll be psychedelic work is sort of when people go deep into the experience, and then you might be working with them after, but you can also work with people who are sort of having a milder experience and able to talk, in which case, especially with ketamine, it's like an amazing lubricant for the work. And as everyone's saying, there'll be an experiential component. I will, ask the class what your favorite drugs are, and I'll do my best to bring them. And well, actually, we're not going to do that, but it turns out that breath work is such a good simulation of the psychedelic experience. So that will be our plan, that one of the two classes will be a breathwork experience where you'll have an opportunity to enter a non-ordinary state. And I'm finding like people, so what I've been doing the last little over 2 years is group ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and really drawing on my core energetics experience to hold the group process as people are having medicine sessions, and after and before and all around. The other part of my experience is many, many years ago working with people using MDMA. But some of the people who come for the ketamine then come back and do breath work, and like half of them say the breath work took them to a deeper place than the ketamine did. So that's the plan. And but next June, that's a long ways away, so who knows what'll happen.
Thank you so much, Ted. Really appreciate it. I'm wondering if the students would be uncomfortable if the academic director of the Institute was also doing the postgrad program as a student. I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want to miss this. One other component of the program is your project. And each year that we have the postgrad program, the students choose a topic that resonates with them about the work. And you'll do a pretty lengthy experience with that. And you'll work with a mentor. And often people will pick a mentor that is a core energetics person who has expertise in the field or in the area that their project is around. And you know, in attending the 5th year projects, by the way, the Core 4 next year will attend the projects as well. So Sunday afternoon, you'll present your projects to a number of the faculty, to Core 4, and then typically there are alumni who come as well. And the projects have blown me out of the water each time I've witnessed them, and the things that I've learned and the things that make me even more excited about core energetics work and the future of it. And, you know, and the creative turns that one wouldn't expect. Janet Diamond did her project on climate change and core energetics, and just developed this whole amazing field in core energetics, and has been presenting and doing things with that. And a number of our diversity efforts at the Institute have been really largely impacted by post-grad projects, Jeremy's included, and other people as well. So, and then, as I mentioned, this year we're doing something new where we have a couple people who have volunteered to help with guidance around if you want to write a paper that you could possibly publish. So we have some support for that too. So anyway, enough from me. I'd love to just open up the floor for any questions anybody might have. And we've got a little time left, so let's go for it. Anybody who has a question, just feel free to unmic and go for it. Or unmute, I'm sorry, and go for it. You're muted, Beth, still. Or we can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just like thinking about these papers, which and projects which sound really exciting. And I just am aware that in the past years the student body has been asking for access to those projects, and as you talk about how they've been so influential, I mean, I just wonder if there's a way that the presentations can be for more than just the people. Like, how can we make those more public in a way that could be for a broader impact?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a lot of potential there. I mean, I hope it's okay that I speak a little bit about my experience with what you're doing, Lindsay. But one of the things that Lindsay has brought into the program since her arrival is an awareness of ways that we can expand our presence in the world. And so as you say that, Beth, I think there might be, you know, we're making connections with different people now where that might help with something like that. And certainly I'd be open to exploring that and seeing what we can do. I mean, I think, and it feels important to me. I mean, I feel like core energetics in its best state is really a modality that could have a positive impact on the world right now, given what's happening in society. And I think we have the right tools to help. And so I'm all for making the work more visible. So, and I'd love to have a further conversation with that about that too, if you have any ideas. And not putting anything on you.
If I can add just 2 small ways that we're doing what you're saying, Beth, is, well, one, we're going to be rebuilding the website next year. So how can we make publications, you know, available to the public via the website is one option, with consent. And the second, just to give an example of what Jim was just speaking about, the Institute in partnership with Jana in partnership with the Institute, made a submission to present at the MHA conference early in the fall. And she was one of 28 people selected with 900 applications made. So she'll be presenting at their conference on climate and core energetics in DC in September. So we're wanting to investigate more opportunities to connect our graduates with and find out how we can support them.
Another possibility might be if, sorry, I lost you guys. If you have someone come and record your 15-minute presentation to everyone, and then you'd have it to be able to send to whoever you want, you know?
Right, YouTube.
Right, yeah.
Right.
That I
I
just have
wonder if there's a way to make that a part of it, like not just an option, but to be like, we're gonna record this to,
Yeah, I'm happy to explore that as well. I would have to, you know, there are a number of considerations around different legal things and stuff
Sure.
like that, but it's worth an exploration for sure. Someone was trying to, Dove, were you trying to say something or?
I was just going to ask a really kind of boring practical question, and also thank all the faculty here presenting. Thank you so much. It's really, really helpful and exciting to hear, getting me fired up for it. Just kind of a silly question. What's the minimum amount of students needing to sign up for? Is it possible that this won't happen? And what is there a maximum? So I'm just trying to get a sense of how many people are going to, how big the group is going to be, and
Sorry.
no, go on.
The minimum is we need 5 students to run the program. And I know of at least one student who's here today. I won't say who it is in case, who has said they definitely intend to do it, but there have been a number of people that have expressed interest in it. So I'm, you know, it's not for sure, but I have a good feeling about it. I think there's a really, you all that are here, there's some really alumni that I think are ready and wanting to do this. And there were a couple of people that applied last year and then it didn't happen. And so I think, and so the minimum is 5. We haven't in the past worried about a maximum number, but that'll be part of our, you know, I'll be collaborating with the presenters and stuff to see if there's a need for a maximum number or a cutoff of maximum, you know, because I want the group to be a size that people get the maximum impact from, in terms of the people that are doing all 5 weekends. I have a question for Brian and for Marcia and Brian. One of the things I'm excited about in my practice is clients who are coming in and exploring polyamory and other relationship paradigms than the traditional couple. Is that, I'm assuming the work that you're doing is applicable to that relationship as well, or to kind of the new, like I'm excited about young people saying, well, not so young people, but people now saying, look, we're looking at all these traditional ways of living that maybe aren't serving, and we're going to expand and open to, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's clearly part of well, we've been through our own sort of journey as practitioners around that early on. You know, when we met out of graduate school, there was the sexual revolution. Everybody was challenging those norms, and then there was this sort of wave of, you know, this isn't working, this is destructive, this is bad news, there's psychological reasons why people are doing this, and they got to address those. And so there was a long period of anything but monogamy was somehow aberrant or not functional. And I think over time, what we've come to realize is that there is no norm, there's no right way, there's no, you know, there's no level of sexuality that by and large is in and of itself destructive. The problems show up in monogamy are different than the problems that show up in other types of relational triads and thruples and whatnot. So everybody that makes their choices just, you know, probably needs to step back and look at, you know, what works for them and what are the problem areas, what are the difficulties in the choices they're making. I don't know if you want to add to that, Marcia, but yeah, I mean, we get away from this model of, you know, and I have to say that in our history at CORE, you know, there was an implicit message that, you know, lots of sex was healthy and less sex was less healthy and no sex was a real problem, you know. And now we're looking at, there are people that are choosing asexual lifestyles, and we have to welcome and understand and appreciate and support and normalize that as well as every other thing. So it's kind of a long-winded answer.
Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, I ditto what Brian's saying. I mean, I'll just say that, like, we're open, right, to the struggles that are inherent in all various forms of relationship. And I think like what we do is helpful and applies to many different types of relationships. But, you know, I do think that it's important to any practitioner to understand what the pitfalls are in some of the more non-traditional relationships as people get into those relationships.
Mhm. Thank you.
But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcia. Natasha, I see your question in the chat. With regard to the supervision requirements, you'll need 9 supervision sessions with an approved institute approved supervisor during the course of the year. And yes, those can be virtual. You don't have to fly in for supervision. Supervision can be done virtually. I hope that answers your question. And your meetings with your mentor that assists you and supports you for your project can be done virtually or over the phone as well. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a question, if there's time.
Yes.
So, well, I'll just be pointed. I want to do this, and I want to be really excited about it, and I feel like I have a sense of the things that would get me excited, and I sort of at moments hear them referenced to, but I sort of just want to like put this out here in a very explicit way so that either people can say, yes, this is exactly what I'm hoping to give, or you know what, that's really not the direction of my class. So I'll get a good sense of what I can expect. So what I really want from 5th year is, on the one hand, classes that are very practice focused. Right now that I'm seeing clients, like my main focus in coming to 5th year would be learning so that I can better serve clients and deepen my work with them, more so than my personal work. So I love a few things that I've heard about teaching classes like ourself, right? Doing some kind of practice in class or doing like supervised kind of work in classes. And then secondarily, I would like to feel that the level of learning and teaching in 5th year is elevated above, like it's being taught on a level that a 2nd year student maybe would not understand, for example. So again, I just kind of want to get a sense that like this is really, really graduate level stuff, right? And I don't say that in any kind of condescending way if that's what people feel they've already put out. I just like to hear that explicitly spoken to if any of the faculty or teachers have feelings about that, or if it resonates or doesn't resonate. I wanted to put that out there.
I think what you're naming is really important, Emmanuel, and I appreciate it. And I felt committed to what you're saying you want. I mean, I felt committed before you said it, obviously. But
Likewise,
yes.
absolutely.
You're going to find that you're going to be looked at differently as a fifth-year student because you are a graduate, and you will be treated differently by the faculty because in a lot of sense we are colleagues, right? And now you're doing this graduate work but it is collegial. There's a lot of working together. And as a colleague, yeah, I'm going to challenge you more than I would a student, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emmanuel. I'm looking at the time and I really want to we were already a little over. I want to honor the time that we put out and thank everybody for coming. I'm absolutely available to have conversations with anybody who's interested in the program and wants to know more, just has any questions. And yeah, I want to thank the faculty members for coming and for all the work that's already gone into this in my conversations with them and in them developing their class plans. And I just want to say, for me, this represents part of a passion that's happening at the Institute among faculty, among this committee that I've been working with for really up-leveling what our offerings are and up-leveling. I feel we're already graduating really wonderful practitioners into the world. And, you know, there's so much expertise. All the people that are going to be teaching there are teaching their fields of expertise, you know, core energetics, but fields that they've been committed to. And, you know, Brian and Marcia developed their own modality, basically, EMM. And, you know, so you're getting really wonderful practitioners, and I know these people personally, and I have great confidence that they're going to give you what you want, Emmanuel. So, all right. I want to thank you all for coming again. I really appreciate your taking time on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. and looking forward to more. I hope to see you all next October. All right.
Nice
Thank you.
meeting you all.
Nice to see you all.
Great
Bye-bye,
being with
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Oh.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.
Night.
Bye.